Welcome to EdUp Curriculum. I am your host, Nicole Poff, and I am so excited about today's guest. We have been planning this episode for months now, and it's finally here. So without further ado, I want to introduce today's guest, John Pollard from the Frankie Honors College at University of Arizona. John, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. I'm really glad we finally made this happen, and I'm really excited to talk about a number of things with you today.
Awesome. Before we jump in, what do you want the audience to know about you, yourself, your personal background, how you ended up as the dean of Frankie Honors College?
Yeah, I started my faculty career here 26 years ago as a faculty member in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry, and taught for many, many years in that space. I engaged in educational-based research with a colleague of mine that led to us developing a curriculum called chemical thinking, which is a new way to teach general chemistry, which is the primary curriculum taught for introductory chemistry here at the University of Arizona, and also used at a handful of other universities across the country. We really wanted to shift chemistry as being from a set of things people know to how a chemist thinks. I then got interested in interdisciplinary thinking and started teaching small seminar courses for the Honors College here. One thing led to another. I was, because of my work in innovating in active learning pedagogy here at the University of Arizona, transforming large classrooms or large flat spaces into classrooms where we can do active learning instead of traditional lecturing. I came over to the Honors College to kind of implement some of those pedagogical frameworks. One thing led to another, and the dean position came open, and here I am. So I'm really excited. I've always been a very student-centered, learner-centered person, and I think that's why maybe I'm sitting in the position I'm in, and also just really interested in innovation within the higher ed space and the student experience. So that's kind of my story in a very, very quick nutshell there.
I love it. And Honors College is so interesting to me. It's interesting to me, and I don't feel like it's talked about enough. And I mean, you and I were just chatting about this before. I have two kids, both have skipped a grade. One, the youngest, every single day, waking her up for school before we moved her up, she didn't want to go to school. It was a fight every day. We moved her up, and she's flying. We have not seen any more of those issues. The other, we've moved up. She's also in gifted, and she is still bored. And so honors education is really interesting to me as a parent, because I'm looking at what does this look like for her? If she's in sixth grade and she's already so bored, what does her future look like? So kind of give me and I'm just naive here. Do students apply to University of Arizona Honors College specifically, or do they get admitted to University of Arizona and then get sought after by the Honors College?
Both, actually. So how it works is this: there's two primary entry points into the Honors College and the Frankie Honors experience here at the University of Arizona. First of all, the traditional way is that students will apply to the University of Arizona and also additionally apply to the Frankie Honors College. So they could get admitted to the University of Arizona, but not get admitted to the Frankie Honors College, but they still could come to the University of Arizona, or they could get admitted to both. Or we also have students who have come to the University of Arizona who didn't apply to the Frankie Honors College, but then once they get here a semester, apply and come in. And we have an increasing number of students that are doing that as well. So that's typically how, that's pretty common for honors colleges and programs across the country. Students apply separately to be admitted, and then sometimes students will not apply, but then will want to be part of the program or the college, and will apply once they're here. So that's typically how it works.
That's awesome. And how many, I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah.
How many students are in the Frankie Honors College?
Yeah, we have about 4,100 students in the Frankie Honors College, roughly right now. Yeah, we're one of the
Wow.
larger honors colleges in the country. We're not the largest. Not there's a couple that are significantly larger than us, believe it or not. But in general, the average for a large R1 like University of Arizona, typically honors colleges are smaller than we are. But we've grown over the years, and I'm sitting here, and the sunlight coming in here is because my office, our honors college is embedded in an honors village. We have our own residence hall here that has 1,050 beds, primarily for first year students. And this is, you're starting to see this more across the country, where living learning communities like we have here for our honors students provide that anchor for that first year. And then sometimes students will stay here the second year. Sometimes many of them move, off campus. But yeah, we're a big program.
That's so cool. And the honors village is awesome because as you were talking, I was thinking, what is the difference? And this is going to be my question for you. So you're a traditional student at University of Arizona, you're a student at honors in the honors college. What does the difference look like for the students who are in the honors college?
Well, the difference is really about the opportunities that we offer our students here. So students if you were to meet a Frankie Honors student, one thing you'll notice really quickly is these students tend to have a very diverse set of interests. You'll see students who are triple majors in biochemistry, Spanish, and public health. Or these just wild, and then two thematic minors, or there'll be a psychology major, and then in our creative intelligence and innovation dual degree program that's unique to honors students, or our health and human values minor, which is in the honors college here. So these students, they when we cohort these, what I always talk to students about is many of the students that come to us into the honors college in their high school was always kind of held up as the smartest kid, the gifted kid, the one who just crushed everything, the valedictorian. What I love about what we do here at Frankie is, and then all of those kids come together, and it kind of levels up the experience, and I think that's a good thing. It's like going to the pros, so to speak, where you're not cohorted with all the people who were the smartest kids in their high school. So that creates a really interesting dynamic with the students, and I think and rising tides raises all ships. One thing I will say is that we really pride ourselves here is getting students involved in undergraduate research very early on. The University of Arizona is a research powerhouse, and so all of our students engage in undergraduate research or creative inquiry. Many of them start off their first semester in that, and that experiential learning opportunity is really a signature feature, one of the signature features of being a Frankie Honors student here. And so you'll see that. You'll also see our students wanting to do more. We have a significant number of our students do study abroad experiences. That's a big part of the honors experience. They are very involved in clubs, very involved in giving back to our community. Our honors service club here is student driven. It's a huge club, and really works within our community very actively. And we also have a large number of students who come to the Frankie Honors College who want to go to medical school or into the health professions. And that's actually one of our specialties. We're very, very adept at preparing and getting students into medical schools. And we have an early assurance program with our medical school here in Tucson. And also we're starting the one for the medical school in Phoenix, where our students can get admitted to medical school early, their junior year, and then they have a guaranteed seat at the medical school. We also have that for our vet school here, which is really amazing. So, these students who come in wanting to get more out of the college experience, wanting to get experiential learning, wanting to be cohorted with like-minded students, but also want to be cohorted with students who have different disciplinary interests. And that's kind of one of the signature features of a Frankie Honors student.
I know that you're providing a huge gift to the students, but what a huge gift to the parents too, because as I'm hearing this, we are struggling with so many of the same issues as parents, and we don't know how to solve them. For example, the peer-to-peer, like our child sits so high within her class that there is no equal to her. And, she goes to these gifted, like one day things with schools across the state, but it's just one day where she gets a glimpse of others who are at her level, just one day out of the year. She does want to be a doctor. And as parents, we're like, what does this mean? What should we be doing now? What should we be doing in college? So as parents trying to navigate it, it's wonderful that you have the resources and that you're supporting these students in this way. It's just a gift to the parents too.
Yeah, it's funny. The day we're recording this is our admitted students day. So today in the afternoon, I'll be engaging with a lot of parents. And yeah, it's funny because I'm both the dean here at the Frankie Honors College, but I have a daughter who's also in the Honors College. So I see both sides of it. And I always talk to parents about that. Like, I get it. I know what it feels like to have a student, that anxiety of sending a student to college. And I'm leading a program where I have a daughter who's part of it. So, yeah, there's a lot of worry these days from parents about things like, you know, what's the pathway for my student or child to get into medical school or graduate school? At Frankie, 2/3 of our students go to graduate programs upon graduation. Or how about, worried about the job market? It's so wild now, that there are jobs that don't exist yet that will be opportunities for our students because of the AI revolution and all the other dynamical changes within our culture and our society. That's why when we talk to parents about this dual degree program we have in the Honors College called the Bachelor of Creative Intelligence and Innovation, it's what we call a transdisciplinary degree program. And what that means is that students work in interdisciplinary teams and courses to learn systems thinking and complex problem solving. And really, like your daughter, for example, very likely she's never been put into situations in her K-12 experience where she's given a problem that doesn't really have a solution or an obvious one. And we all know that that's what real professional life is like. So this curriculum not only does that, but also each class has an industry partner where we bring in a corporate, nonprofit, government agency that brings a real problem to these teams of interdisciplinary students. It's almost like each class is its own internship. And students work on those problems. We just had students up at Honeywell working on a challenge that they issued to us about flying cars. This is the new technology coming. We've worked with Pima County here in Arizona on different challenges they have with resources and all types of things. And the students, what we say to our parents is that we want to develop a T-shaped student. In other words, they're going to get their depth of disciplinary understanding from their major or majors, as we see with Frankie Honor students. But that breadth, that broadness of how do I interact with people of other disciplines? If I'm a business major, how do I act with engineers? If I'm an engineer, how do I act with social science majors? Or if I'm in the arts, how do I interact with someone from the sciences? And how do we come together to solve problems? And developing those core capabilities is really, really an important thing so that students can refine and find their hidden intellectualism and be ready to go out there and be really contributors to the job market. So we talk directly to our parents about getting students getting prepared for the job market, getting students prepared for graduate programs, and that real practical, can they find, again, what I call, it's not my term, it's but hidden intellectualism, and can they find their hidden vocation out there and their passion? That's what we talk to the parents about, and it seems to resonate.
I love this so much. I mean, for multiple reasons. A lot of times in college, let's say you're in your business college building most of the time. And those are the people that you're interacting with, unless you're in your dorms and you have your friends. But from an academic standpoint, you're surrounded by people who have a shared goal of business, right? I know at least that's how it was when I was in school. I really didn't see any other building besides the College of Education. That was the only building I saw. None of the others. They looked beautiful, but I had no reason to interact with those students. Um, and then, yeah, you're right. You enter the workforce and you're like, oh, not everyone is an educator.
Yep.
And not everyone thinks like an educator. How do all of these thoughts work together? So, what an advantage to have connected those dots long before you're even in the workforce or had the opportunity to connect those dots.
Yeah, and also what also goes along with this is, putting students in positions where they're intellectually uncomfortable because they have a problem or a challenge in front of them that just doesn't, there's no, it's like solution. And and we know, I mean, go out to talk to any successful professional, anybody out there. Most of the challenges they deal with are murky. They're trying to induce change in a system as opposed to solving something. There's sometimes that, there's times where you can solve things, but especially for people who are interested in some sort of leadership, and that's one value that we really promote here at Frankie is the cultivation of leadership mindset. And part of course, leadership is recognizing that you're going to always be handed problems that are sticky and challenging. And how do you feel in that space? And how do you get comfortable with feeling like, wow, this is not an easy problem? And that's a lifelong thing. It's not like that you ever master that, but how you deal with it, how you cope with it, how you approach it. I think that's a really important thing that we want to start that cultivation, that journey here at the Frankie Honors College. And that happens through their research that they do for their thesis, through our Creative Intelligence Innovation program, for example. We have a minor called Health and Human Values, which has students explore the social determinants of health. Healthcare is a really dynamic, changing field. Becoming a physician now is going to be different for your daughter. What it means to be a physician when she gets to that point is a lot different than what it means now because of, again, the AI revolution and many of the other advances within medical technology. So being in touch with the humanistic part of what it means to be a doctor is really important. So those are the kinds of core capabilities, skills that we look to help our students cultivate here.
I want to preface this. So in K through 12 and most of higher ed, students depend on rubrics, right? And they are graded on a variety of things, but oftentimes the correct answer is part of their grade, how we measure their performance. So I'm thinking, okay, a student's gone K through 12, and I hate to keep bringing it back to my daughter, but she'll work on presentations that are wonderful, and then she goes back to the rubric and she's like, oh, this needed to be 3 slides. Okay. I have to take away all the things that I'm like, these were the most wonderful parts of this presentation. You have to strip away to make sure that you're meeting this rubric. How do students respond? Like even in that first year, is it difficult for them to start living in what feels like a gray area? Does that make sense? Is my question
Oh,
making sense?
100%. Rubrics like that can, you know, that kind of structure can be an important part of a student's education because even out in the, quote unquote, the professional world, there are boundary conditions to things you do. You got 3 minutes to say this, you got to do that. So being able to conform or align with those kinds of things, it's an important skill for a person to develop. But what's not really cultivated, at least that I've seen with my children at the K-12, is getting in this gray space. I've worked with students, and we really did this in the chemical thinking curriculum, where I'd have exams where I'd pose questions to students where there was maybe 4 or 5 ways you can answer it. It's more about how they think that I was interested in. Now, those are horrible to grade because
Yeah.
those are not fun to grade, but they're great ways to assess students. So really, I've seen it. I've seen these students who have the 6.8 weighted GPA or whatever do they have come in. they've never ever struggled in their life, and they get put into a situation where they're posed with a challenge or a question, and suddenly there is not a clear answer, and it's uncomfortable. But you know what? These students are up. We've seen they're able to flip the switch and go lean in. Nicole, one thing I'll say just broadly about student success that we've seen here at the Frankie Honors College, and I tell parents this all the time, I can kind of predict if a student's going to be successful when they come in here, not necessarily based on what their GPA was in high school, because I've seen students who come in with unweighted 4.0s and struggle at the university. It's about their sort of resilience to challenge. That right there, if a student comes in with that and a generative mindset, an open, growth generative mindset, and is willing to evolve, boy, that's gold right there. And so we really want to help students. Some students come in innately with it, some don't, but that doesn't mean they can't acquire it. So that's what I would say. I think one of the things that we don't talk a lot about in higher ed as much as I think we should is how do we cultivate that thing. At the Frankie Honors College, we've got 5 values that we talk about all the time with my staff, my faculty, and with our students. We seek, we connect, we create, we evolve, and then we celebrate, meaning we're curious. We activate curiosity through connections. We create, we're generative. We want to move students from knowledge consumers to knowledge creators. We evolve, that's the tough one. We know that you can't have up without down, that success doesn't come without struggle. They're both sides, two sides of the same coin. And then we celebrate, which means we find joy in we evolve. We find joy in creating, and finding joy in life is so important. So yeah, that's kind of my perspective on this whole thing.
I love all of this. I think about some of the challenges that colleagues, maybe not in education, but different sectors, are telling me kind of about some of the newer employees coming up into the workforce. And they're like, they just want the correct answer. If I need to give them such detailed instructions. I can't just say, take this and do this. I have to say, take this. They go back to their desks, they come back and they say, I have 17 more questions because I don't understand. What exactly do you want me to do? And I don't remember it that way when I was in the workforce, and I don't know where things shifted to now this, like, it's black and white. But I'm optimistic with what's happening with your college, because it seems like right now we're missing that skill in the workforce, the ability to operate within the gray. Your boss says, hey, do this. And maybe you don't understand all the parts of the pieces yet, but you're smart. And I always say everything is figure outable. And so you can figure it out, and you can take a first stab, and you can go back to your boss and you can say, is this what you wanted? But right now it feels like we're seeing the opposite, where it's like, I don't even want to step foot into this project until I know every single expectation and I'm given a clear roadmap to how to solve it.
Yeah. And it's interesting to think that as professionals out there, we all know this, and yet we still have a very sort of binary way often that we train our students. Now, there are curriculum out there. There's some K-12 programs that are very innovative across the country that are doing some really cool things in the transdisciplinary space, trying to develop these core capabilities. But in general, that's not what you see. But when we have these students come into a program like the Frankie Honors College, we feel a strong responsibility through research opportunities, through our really engaging problem-based courses that we offer, with our experiential learning opportunities, the community we build. That is a core thing we want to cultivate in our students, that resilience and that ability to know that you're going to be handed challenges that do not have obvious solutions, and that is not what that's what it's like. And your tests may not have reflected that, but the quote unquote real world. I wish we had a better term for that because it's all real, but the professional world is more like that. But there's joy in that. That's what makes it exciting, you know. Instead of being frustrated that there's not a right or wrong answer, it's more interesting when it's not black and white. It makes it more vibrant, and so that's what we try to really talk about here.
I love that. I love that so much. Now we have a lot of listeners who operate in a lot of the online space. How would an honors college look online? Have you seen any online honors colleges that you feel like are doing it well?
You know, I think the online space for honors education is emerging now. There's a couple honors colleges that have programs, but I'm not sure it's been completely unlocked yet of how we provide this experience online. I do think, and we are in the process now of over the next year, we'll be launching a Frankie Honors online program. But the thing about that's interesting about the online space for me is there's the modality that you deliver it in, but then there's also the population that tends to go towards online education. So you can have the modality with a traditional population, which is different than the modality with a non-traditional population. And the non-traditional population has different sort of, I think, needs and learning outcomes to consider. So the big question for me is how do you activate experiential learning? How do you put students into sort of intellectually uncomfortable and challenging spaces in an online environment that also makes it collaborative? The beauty is that the technology now is allowing online collaboration in a synchronous way that can feel like an active learning classroom. But many of the online experiences are asynchronous. So that's a real challenge. I think we will figure this out at some point, but I love it because it's challenging us in honors education to think, how do we take this thing we do and translate it in the same way to the online experience? Again, there are some programs that have grown some honors online things, but they look very traditional to me. I haven't seen anything that's popped that is sort of innovative in that space. We're trying to figure this out. I think our creative intelligence and innovation dual degree program is for us possibly a way for us to port into this. But my question always is, for an online student, especially a non-traditional online student, why are they choosing the online modality? And how can we service their needs through the online platform? It's going to come. I think honors education is always across the country. We're the innovative nuclei across the country. But this is the next frontier for me, in my opinion. I haven't seen anything really innovative in the online honors space yet.
I can't wait to see what you guys come up with because, again, there's so many online schools. We support a lot of online schools, and that is always the challenge, right? Is we can work out the synchronous pieces. We can work out what experiential learning will look like when we have hours and hours of time together virtually. But the asynchronous piece, how do we build that community? I mean, you're talking about an honors village on campus. How does that translate? And I think you asked us another question. Does the online student want that same level of community, right? If they're taking care of, for whatever reason, their parents or a kid or whatever it is, do they want to participate in all of those things? I think these are all really good things to wrestle with.
Yeah. What I like about this question, Nicole, is for the online student, in particular, it's focused on the non-traditional. I mean, I can talk all about what honors means and what it means, what we're delivering as that experience at the Frankie Honors College for our students who are here on campus and how we cohort them and the research experiences they have, et cetera. But what does honors mean for an online student who's a parent, who's got a full-time job, who's coming home at night? And what is the value proposition for the honors versus non-honors online experience. That's, I think, what we have to figure out, because I don't want to just stand up honors because now we have honors. I want it to be for our students where there's a certain type of online non-traditional student that will be drawn to this. And I've been thinking maybe it involves students who can bring in and leverage their own experience that they bring in and build upon that in a creative way. Maybe that's where it's at. Maybe there's ways we can guide students to online students who are trying to find a new pathway, for them to do a like investigative inquiry about finding internships and connecting the dots of how they put their curricular pathway together to best match and discover their hidden intellectualism. I'm stealing that term from a book I just read called Hacking College, which I recommend everyone to read, which is a fantastic way to look at how we develop the core sort of job readiness for students. But I think there's some clues there on what we can do, but we haven't quite, to be perfectly honest, we haven't quite solved it yet, but we're going to get there. I'm excited about that space.
Well, and I mean, food for thought here, just food for thought. So I'm finishing up my PhD at Kansas State, and when I started, I'm an on-ground student, but most of my classes have been transitioned to online when I was still in that phase. But I realized on night one that everyone sitting in my class looked radically different than me, because they didn't have experience in the field. They were not parents. They had gone bachelor's, master's, doctorate. And so some of these kids were like 24, 25, and they could sit in the library all day long and read and research. And when I would present, on, let's say, accreditation, right? I was bringing a lens of, here's the institutions I've supported, and here's how accreditation has been part of those institutional work, and they were bringing just theory. So I felt like I kind of back to that peer level setting, right? Like I felt like I wanted to be surrounded by people who were like me, who had experiences within their institutions, who were now coming back for a PhD. And I could learn from them and what they were getting from their community college or their, for-profits or whatever. And so food for thought there too, that maybe there's an online student, honors student who is needing peers more like them. I don't know if I made any sense there.
No, I think that's a great thought there. And what you made me think of is maybe part of the key to developing sort of an innovative online honors experience is even though much of it can be asynchronous, maybe there's ways to connect people, because you can connect people in with different platforms and ways, so that they offline in their own time can have synchronous interactions or things like that. That could be the key to it. And the sharing of those common lived experiences, and then to build on those, have that be integrated into helping students find that hidden vocation that they're looking for. What is their why? Why are they in this program? And what are their aspirations? And then how can we then engage those students in complex problem solving and systems thinking as applied to an interdisciplinary experience, leveraging their already life experience that they've had as parents or as partners or as professionals or whatever it may be. You're giving me some ideas, Nicole.
Good. Yeah. I don't know. No, I don't want to ever say I was bummed, because I loved my experience, but I would have really loved to have peers around me who were wrestling with similar things within different institutions. I think that would have brought a lot to my experience. And many times I felt like I was the teacher, like the second teacher, because the teacher would be there giving the theory, and then I could say, oh yeah, this is how it's played out, in the real world. Like I was always giving that real world perspective. And I wish that others in my surrounding could have been given that real world so that I could have seen other challenges faced. So food for thought there.
Yeah. I mean, how do we create a situation where if you have a mixed group where you have, and we're just going to go by age here, if you have younger and older students together, how do you create an opportunity where they can like lift each other up through the learning as opposed to, and there's always going to be a little bit of dependence here on, the older student might just bring some wisdom and some leadership to the situation. But yeah, that's great. And the final thing I'll say in this is, when I got my PhD, I started my PhD program when I was 22, and I did a traditional PhD in chemistry, and I was and the most valuable experience I had was struggling in the research lab, and learning. That's where I learned about how we evolve, so to speak, because research is hard, and it's basically a series of failures with an occasional success. But I also had a shared experience with other people like myself. But yeah, those are great thoughts, and I'm really excited about what we might try to do in this space, and I'm taking this as a challenge, Nicole.
Totally. I love it. And I also think too, community, right? Like this is such a silly example, but when I was pregnant with my kids, I joined this app and it was like what to expect when you're expecting. And you could join little groups based on when you were expecting to deliver. And then you ask, and there were these people that you didn't know, but you asked questions to each other. How are you struggling? Are you feeling this? Why are my ankles so big? Anyone else hate the orange drink that you have to take when you're pregnant? Like all of these things. And we just answered each other's questions. And I had no idea who any of these people were, but somehow knowing that they were going through the same journey as me and being able to defer to them for questions was great. And so going back to your like, how do we give people the opportunities to connect with like-minded people? Maybe it's something as simple as that, as digital opportunities on their phone to join communities based on I'm a working parent and I need tips on how do I turn my articles into audible versions that I can listen to when I'm driving to work because I don't have the time to read 40 pages of articles, But for a student who is 22 and on campus, they love sitting in the library reading those articles. But for, maybe someone who's taking care of kids, they're like, I need something that I can listen to while I'm folding laundry.
Yeah. Yeah, what you make me think of here is, one of the key ingredients might be is how do we create community? I think this goes forget about honors for a second. I think for any online experience, how do we create community for these students? There's been experiments done in the online space that have kind of failed, like the MOOCs, and if you remember the massive online courses that just never really played out.
That we're going to take over.
Yeah, that we're going to take over. During the pandemic, I was teaching at the time the chemical thinking course, and I was forced into teaching online. I had never even heard of Zoom. I'd never even done. I barely used FaceTime, and suddenly I was in Zoom and trying to do active learning pedagogy, and we figured it out with breakout rooms and stuff. It was crude, but it gave me hope that at least in the synchronous space, you can do some really cool things. But the asynchronous experience is different. But I'll tell you what, we've got some really smart people here on my staff and my faculty and at the University of Arizona and University of Arizona Online. And we're working on this, and I'm excited. Maybe in a year or two, I'll come back and we can talk about honors online.
Absolutely. Yep. You're going to have to come back and tell us, here's what we did. We're pioneering it.
Yeah.
Well, John, thank you so much for being here. This is such a fascinating topic, and for the on-ground portion, but also for the online portion, I'm excited to see what you guys do for online. But also as a parent, you have made me very optimistic about what support and resources are available for my kid too, personally, as she progresses in her education.
That's great, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be on here and talk about the power of honors education. We're doing amazing things here at Frankie, but I'll tell you, honors colleges across the country are doing great work with great students. And I am a firm believer that honors education is one of the bright jewels in higher ed right now. And I'm excited for the future of honors in this space. And today I get to talk with parents about it and prospective students. So it's a good place to be. So thank you so much, Nicole. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, John. And thank you all for listening. We will see you next time. All right. That was awesome.
Great.
That was great. Do you have time for like another quick 15-minute on
Sure.
just being a dean leadership?
Let's do it.
All right. I'm just going to keep it going and then my editor can spice it up. All right. Welcome to EdUp Curriculum. I am your host, Nicole Poff, and today we are joined again by Dr. John Pollard from University of Arizona Frankie Honors College. John, thank you so much for being here with us again today. Thank you for sharing your time with us. The guests already know you, so let's really jump in. I wanted to have you back on to just talk about leadership in general. Like, there's so many provosts and deans and program directors right now who are really looking at the others, saying times are shifting. The floor feels a little bit rocky. What are others doing? And, I feel like when we can learn from each other, it just makes us stronger. So I just kind of want to start out with, as a dean, what challenges are you currently, what keeps you up at night as a dean?
Well, thank you, Nicole. Yeah, that's the big question. And there's a number of things. Obviously in higher ed right now, we're facing the enrollment cliff, so to speak. So enrollment, attracting students is a challenge. Societal pressures on the value of a college education. This is a big deal, and we're being challenged. Like, what's the ROI on this? What are students really getting out of this? And I'm glad we're being challenged on this because it's a good question. Of course, financial pressures. You see this across the country. You're not going to find, it's going to be rare to find an institution that is not having some sort of financial struggle. And small universities and liberal arts colleges are closing across the country at a really staggering rate. Universities are facing budget cuts. There's changes in university athletics that are posing challenges. I mean, there's all these external force functions that are putting pressure on higher ed. For me personally, it's really I talk with my staff all the time and faculty, asking us, what is our just cause? What is our why? I'm kind of speaking from the perspective of what Simon Sinek preaches, which he and I was turned on to his perspectives years ago. And what I found interesting about his take on leadership is he talked a lot about it with respect to corporate America, but I found it to map perfectly onto leadership in higher ed. And our just cause, why do we do this? Is really around having this enduring impact, inspiring these students that are going to go on beyond us and sort of investing in the future. This is our just cause. And when things get challenging, what I've learned is that to have a just cause, like to support and inspire our students, when things are great, you don't really talk about the just cause much. You're just rolling, right? You're just doing your thing. Things are great. But when that just cause, that why is really needed is in the challenging times, to ask yourself, like, why are we doing this? We're presented a problem. How are we going to make this decision? We lean on that why, that then can guide us on how we approach it and then what we do. That's how I approach the challenging space that we're in with higher ed right now, which is a combination of enrollment, budgets, external pressures, both from the federal level to the state level, the value proposition of universities, and the experience, all of that put together. And then, and then there's AI, which just
Yeah.
kind of swept through. And now universities I think, are trying to play a catch-up game in many respects. So, um, but I'll tell you what, as much as I can say that things keep me up at night, to some of those challenges as a leader, I am refueled when I engage with our students. I really am. And that is the product of the just cause. So I tell our staff and faculty, when we engage with those students, that's how we refuel. That reminds
Yep.
us why we're doing this. And so that's my kind of perspective on this.
I love that. I mean, because sometimes as an educator, I'm like, you have to dig down deep some days. You're dealing with committees and governance structures, and sometimes people who don't want things to change, and sometimes people who want things to change too fast, right? And it can feel like you're dealing with so many different factors, and you feel just worn down and exhausted. But you're right. You see a student, you talk to a student, and you're like, "Oh, I'm back. I am back in business. This is the reason." Um, yeah, I mean, pop and circumstance makes me cry every single time. I think graduation can fuel me for the high of graduation. It's like the high of nothing else.
What's
As an
funny
educator.
about that, Nicole, is commencement, convocation, graduation comes at the perfect time. It's at the end of the semester. It's when you're worn down the most, and then suddenly you get presented, oh yeah, reminded, this is why we're doing this. And it's
Yeah.
a beautiful cycle we're on. And then we come back and the suffering can start again, so to speak. And
Yeah.
but serving the future the way we do in higher ed, and then accepting the challenges from society, like what is that value proposition, and saying, okay, let's dig into this, and because we're doing this for the betterment of these young students and scholars and for the future of our society. I think it's a really interesting challenge. We have to walk the walk. We talk a lot about cultivating complex problem solving and critical thinking skills, and yet here we are, being, as leaders in higher ed, being put in the position to engage in critical thinking, complex problem solving within our landscape. So for me, I find making sure that we anchor ourselves in the why is really important.
It's funny you said that, because a lot of times I have to kind of reground people in meetings and say, we need to do the exact things that we're asking our students to do, right? We are asking our students to get in the mud, deal with complex thinking. But sometimes higher ed, the structures can make it feel like exhausting to navigate those. And so it's easier to just not change. And I keep kind of really pushing people lately, like, if we want our students to do this, we then also must do it for our students. We have to wrestle with, this is going to take so long to get approved, but it will be worth it because our students are going to benefit from it at the end, right? We can't just give up because it's hard, which again are things we tell our students too, right? I'm like, there's a little bit of inception here of, we need to do the things that we want our students to do. And I think sometimes we forget that too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And kind of adding on to this, one thing that I have found to be a very powerful tool as a leader is to what we've done here in my college at Frankie Honors, University of Arizona, is we came together, our team, and we decided that we wanted to have value. So everyone's got values, right? The universities have their values. You can go to any website, you'll see what their values are and stuff like that. And in general, what I've seen is that values tend to be sort of like words. They're sort of like, compassion, excellence, things like that. And that's great. But oftentimes colleges or universities will state their values, and then they just become either on the signature line of emails, or they're put somewhere and they're not really ever referred to. we wanted to have values that were activating, that we use, like that we refer to. And I talked about this in our last conversation, ours of being we seek, we connect, we create, we evolve, and we celebrate. And not only that we use, but the source of our just cause, our students also buy into these values. And that's a binder for our work. And I have found that to be a powerful tool, a mechanistic tool to help us do our work collectively and to communicate with our students and our stakeholders and our community and everything to talk about what we are. So that's been something I've learned from leadership is, are your values activating? Do you use them? Do they mean something? Or are they just words that are on the signature of your email? And if they are, there might be a way to, maybe it's time to consider how you can turn them on,
Yeah. I think that's such a good point because there's a lot of institutions where, right before an accreditor comes in, we're like, oh, hey, don't forget, these are our values. Our accreditor's coming. Remember, these are the 5 values of X university. But there's other institutions where it's ingrained in every conversation, right? It's the anchor that keeps them from drifting too far from, they make decisions around these values. Every decision is anchored back to, is this in line with our values, which makes decision making actually a lot easier because you're taking egos out of it. Is this in alignment with what our vision and with what our values are?
Yeah.
John, and I did not prepare you for this question. What books have inspired you to be the leader that you are?
Well, I mentioned it earlier, and I'll just go to him again. Simon Sinek had a big influence on me, and I think what was interesting, and I had a family member who kind of turned me on to one of his YouTube videos a decade ago. I mean, early when really he was really not known, was the simplicity of his framework, but the power of it was something that really resonated with me. When he, and it was, the Start With Why. So that book, Start With Why, and actually I have a dean's leadership internship program for students here at the Frankie Honors College, and the curriculum is essentially, part of it is we're going to read the trilogy, the Simon Sinek trilogy, I call it, which is Start With Why, Leaders Eat Last, and The Infinite Game. In those books and his approach to leadership of switching from thinking about the traditional way is like, what do we do? And then how we do it. And then why we do what we do is kind of left last. And his proposition was, let's start with that question of why we do it. Then we think about how we activate that why. Then we talk about what we do. That alone, that simple switch, and then framing everything around that was very powerful for me. And so I think those 3 books, for any leader, I think those are essential reads. And in particular, the one that I think, the third one, The Infinite Game, in that series, that trilogy, I don't know if he meant it to be a trilogy, I'm just calling it that, but I think talks about a really, there we go, The Infinite Game. Thank you. That book's great because again, it's so simple. It just poses the idea that we have 2 different types of games in life, right? And if we view this as a game, we have the finite games. You and I play chess, and you win, I lose, and that's it. We're done, and that's a wrap. But oftentimes people apply that mentality or way of thinking to things that are infinite games. So higher ed, universities competing against each other, colleges, how we develop programs. This is an infinite game. So how do we apply the mindset or I would call it infinite mindset to what we do, that changes how we think about competition. For just a quick example, our main sort of competitor, if you want to say, at the Frankie Honors College is Barrett the Honors College, which is at ASU, and ASU is, of course, right up the street from us. Well, I view the Honors College at ASU as being a necessary component to our success. We want to be challenged by another program that is really strong, and they are. We want them to. We want that worthy adversary, if you want to call it, or competitor. But there's no winning. The only people who win are the students who choose to go to either Frankie or Barrett, because either one, they're going to have a great experience. The winners are the students. Now, are we trying to compete for the same students? Absolutely. And it's a vicious competition. We're trying to draw the best students here, and we're doing things they're not doing, and they've got their own thing going. But we rely on them, because we'll get soft if we don't have any sort of worthy adversary or competition out there. But there's no winning in the sense of a basketball game, which we always win against them. I had to throw that in, but that's what I mean. And so I think that Simon Sinek's works, and it was so simple. And that's what was crazy about it. It just is like, because I was, I guess, conditioned to think in what, how, why, and not why, how, what. So I would start with those books.
Absolutely. And you know what hearing you talk about the why, and I can say this with like complete sincerity, is I know you at the Honors College. I know people, University of Arizona online. I know people, University of Arizona Global Campus, right? All very distinct, and traditional campus, like all very distinct parts of the U of A brand. And it is undeniable that every experience I have with any person across all the different, I can't call them brands, but units maybe of U of A, their why is so clear, and that fuels the work that they do, whether it's online or global or honors or traditional. Like as an entire entity, I have yet to meet any individual, and not to say that they don't exist. I'm just saying I have personally never met anyone from any of the U of A units that I don't feel like is living out a strong, deeply seated why, value.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's one of the things I love about the University of Arizona, is that, student success is our primary strategic imperative. Our president has said it. And, our strategic imperatives are centered around success for every student, research that impacts the world, and then our land grant mission, which is really, really critical and important role for the U of A. If you press our president, President Garamella, on, you only have to pick one of those. You can do what you do all day, every day. He's going to pick student success. And I think that resonates throughout the culture of all the various brands of the University of Arizona. And one thing, too, that I think binds us here together, too, is that it's the 100th anniversary of Bear Down, which is our sort of, motto. And Bear Down talks about that, that ability to evolve, that grit, that resolution. And that's something that I see that all of us here at the University of Arizona who want our students to succeed, our undergraduate and our graduate students, and we see it in our alumni as well. We want to impact the world too through our research. Absolutely, we do world-class research in astronomy and in the sciences, in the arts. We have one of the top dance programs in the country. It's a really diverse, amazing institution. But yeah, I think that's important when you can get especially when there's challenging times, Nicole. Like I've said, it's the challenging times where having that why is critical, that everyone rallies around it.
Absolutely. And when I think about a student, as we're talking about all the brands of U of A, if there is a student in Arizona who wants to go to U of A, there is an avenue for them in any of the brands, right? Like any way they want to go, whether they're honors college, whether they need online, whether they need the global, like there truly is an avenue for every single, and I'm going to say Arizona student, but you could take this across the country. But if you're a 5-year-old and you've grew up watching A of U, or U of A play versus ASU, and you're like, I want to go to U of A, you can. Like, it is not off limits to any 5-year-old at this point in time. There's a path for them when they get there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's we see a lot of parents who are like, are students who their parents were U of A alum, their parents' parents are U of A alum. And we see these third, fourth generation families. And I think a lot of institutions, of course, see that as well. But there's a real deep-seated pride in being an Arizona Wildcat. And if I'm wearing wearing my shirt here today, and this is partnership through Honors. So we have the largest peer-to-peer mentoring program on campus at the Frankie Honors College, and we're really proud of this. But if I'm wearing a U of A, swag, I'm in the airport, I'll be walking by and I'll just look over and someone will just go, just like that. That's all it is. Bear down.
Yep. And KSU, same thing.
Yep.
Because we do this. This is what Wildcats do too for KSU. Yeah. And so if you're wearing purple in any airport, they're yelling it through.
Yeah. And we also do our forks down, which is the opposite of ASU. That's our kind of motto. Of course, I'm sure they have that for us too. But yeah, it's a proud community of alumni. And I think you really hit on it, that there seems to be a unification around the why. And for us, it's student success.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, John, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your thoughts on leadership, the changing, ever-changing world of higher ed. And I hope to have you, I know we chatted about this last podcast, but I hope to have you back on here very soon, revealing what U of A Honors College has put forth for the online version of for Honors College.
Look out. We're bringing it. It's going to be exciting. And Nicole, I just want to thank you for taken time to talk with people like myself in higher ed. I think higher ed, like I said, is under sort of being challenged right now. And we need to be getting our voices out there. We need to be leaning into these challenges. And it's through platforms like yourself that myself, other leaders from across the country in higher ed, all passionate about student success, are able to talk about these important things. So thank you for the platform. I really appreciate it.
And of course. And John, thank you so much for being here with us. And to our listeners, thank you. Thank you.